Twin Peaks may just be the most influential television show of all time, with it inspiring decades worth of video games, movies, and other television shows. So today, I wanted to share a brief history on what I believe to be one of the greatest television shows ever created. In 1977, an unknown movie director by the name of David Lynch completed his first feature-length film Eraserhead, which would go on to be a huge cult classic in the beginning of Lynch's successful career. The film that will give him wider acclaim, though, was 1980's The Elephant Man, starring Anthony Hopkins in 19th century London. After becoming one of the most famous directors in the world through the 80s, Lynch decided to take an odd turn by developing a television show with Mark Frost, who was formerly a writer for Hill Street Blues. While it may not seem like an incredible jump today, in 1990 television content was nowhere near the quality as it is now, with most of the shows either being multi-camera sitcoms or procedurals about doctors, cops, or lawyers, with each episode neatly wrapping up the story with very little overarching plot. At the time, most considered television to be below film, so the idea that a successful and established director would succumb to creating a television show seemed like a crazy move, but with the backing of AVC, Lynch and Frost went to work. On April 8, 1990, the pilot episode of Twin Peaks was aired, featuring the story of the high school girl Laura Palmer being found dead without a clue of who the murderer was. This leads to FBI agent Dale Cooper being sent to the small Washington state town to help local authorities uncover the mystery of Palmer's death. While the premise may seem simple enough, David Lynch and Mark Frost set up this show to seem like a basic cop series on paper, even though that's only scratching the surface of what lies in store. The town of Twin Peaks is filled with odd and sometimes surreal characters that much of the investigation will focus on. We have Agent Dale Cooper, played by Kyle MacLachlan, who you'll come to realize really likes coffee. A lot.
You know, this is, a damn fine cup of coffee.
Some of the other locals living in Twin Peaks are Harry Truman, who's the sheriff, Bobby Briggs, Laura's boyfriend, Leland, her father, and Donna Hayward, her best friend. But as the show goes on, we'll find out that everyone in this community has their secrets. Twin Peaks has a very similar feel as much of David Lynch's former work. It's odd, surreal, and oftentimes vague in the way it gives the audience information. One blaring instance of Lynch's signature style is that many of the characters act in very strange ways and say things that would never work in any other show. For instance, there's a lady in the town that goes around talking to a piece of wood all day that everyone calls, you guessed it, the log lady. And no one ever questions it either, it's just something that goes on in the world that this show takes place in. While we're on the subject of the show's weirdness, we cannot forget to mention its absolutely bizarre yet somehow perfect dream sequences. Usually involving a red room, Laura Palmer, and a dwarf that speaks in reverse, these probably are the most memorable segments of the show that allowed the viewer to piece together some of the town's mysteries through almost nonsensical dialogue. The creator of The Sopranos, David Chase, cites Twin Peaks as an inspiration for his dream scenes, yet even he admits he was never able to match them. I mean, that's saying something when even The Sopranos couldn't reach another show's quality. One of my personal favorite aspects of the show is the soundtrack. Still considered one of the best in television, this show really goes for a moody jazz-type sound, almost matching what you'd hear in an old noir movie, mixed with almost old, cheesy soap opera music. I feel it really adds to the intrigue and lets the audience know that there are mysteries yet to be uncovered. When Twin Peaks went on the air in 1990, it became an instant hit with an audience looking for something new and different to watch. This was a time before cable started taking risks with original programming, and everything else on the network were basic procedurals that wrapped up the murder by the end of the episode. But Twin Peaks was different. It was created by a critically acclaimed filmmaker, had a story and characters that stretched throughout the show, and most importantly, it wasn't afraid to push the limits of what the TV viewer was willing to watch. At the time, all eyes were on David Lynch and Mark Frost's odd show, but unfortunately, things slowly changed when less and less people tuned in to watch by the second season. While Twin Peaks started out strong, it seemed that its greatest strength was also its biggest weakness, the continuous plot. While in present day a person can just go on Netflix to catch up on their favorite show, back in 1990 if you missed an episode you would be left in the dark. This was only worse for Twin Peaks since even when watching all the episodes in order, the viewer was left wondering what was going on, a side effect of Lynch's style. So at the end of Season 2, Twin Peaks was officially cancelled. The final nail in the coffin was the prequel film, Fire Walk With Me, which focuses around the murder of Teresa Banks in the last 7 days of Laura Palmer's life. The film was panned by both critics and many fans of the show, with the major problem being the lack of Agent Cooper. The movie did so poorly at the box office that it didn't even make up half of its production costs, which probably shouldn't have been a surprise for a movie based on a show that was cancelled because not enough people were watching. While the show might have ended, that didn't mean it wasn't fresh in the minds of countless people that were inspired by it, leading to some of the most popular shows, movies, and video games of the past 2 decades being influenced by Twin Peaks. To show how much this one show influenced media, let's take a look at some examples, starting off with how Twin Peaks rubbed off on the Legend of Zelda series. It must be said that Twin Peaks was pretty big in Japan, so much so that Agent Cooper was used to peddle coffee on commercials.
Let's think about this over a coffee. No, Lucy? Incredible. You two have got to try this. It's rich. Man, oh man, this Georgia is damn fine coffee.
It's true.
With this, it shouldn't be a shock to anyone that the likes of the Japanese company Nintendo would get inspiration for The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening from it. In interviews with the game's creators, they admitted that their game featured suspicious types in its cast of characters, influenced by Lynch's murder mystery. Another reference to Twin Peaks and Zelda that I accidentally stumbled upon was that A Link to the Past ending music seems to be clearly inspired by Twin Peaks' intro theme, but don't take my word for it, listen for yourself. As far as I can tell, no one else on the internet has made this song connection yet, but to me it seems far too coincidental since A Link to the Past was being developed when Twin Peaks was on the air. The video game Deadly Premonition, released in 2010, also took inspiration from the show, so much so that it almost crosses into straight-up copying. For one, the main character is an FBI agent that travels to a small town to investigate the murder of a teenage girl. Not only this, but he also really enjoys coffee and has strange dreams. There's also a lady who carries around a pot, a deputy that cries at crime scenes, a place called A&G Diner, and several other plot points and locations that share a resemblance to Twin Peaks. I've read that the first version of the game was even more similar, if that's even possible, so the developers had to go back and revamp the story to make it slightly more original. Along with video games, Twin Peaks has influenced other TV shows in both small and very big ways. First of all, there are tons of examples of shows that have humorously referenced it. This includes Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, in which Scooby dreams of a red room that's inhabited by a short man that talks in reverse.
Welcome to the sitting room, Scooby-Doo.
Look at this!
We also have an episode of the show Psych, in which Sean and Spencer are invited to a small town called Dual Spires, which is home to a ridiculous amount of actors that worked on Twin Peaks. I also want to mention one of my current favorite TV shows airing, Gravity Falls. For those who don't know, it revolves around Mabel and Dipper Pines, who are staying with their grandfather in a small town over the summer, but once they get there, they find out more is going on than they first thought. Even with this show running on the Disney Channel, the creator straight out admits that much of it's inspired by Twin Peaks, including the two main characters being twins, it taking place in a small town in Washington state where strange things are occurring, and just look at some of those backgrounds, they weren't even trying to be subtle. I also can't forget about The Killing, which first 2 seasons followed the lives of 2 detectives as they try to discover who murdered a girl named Rosie Larson. While I couldn't find any official interviews with the writers admitting that it was inspired by Twin Peaks, while watching it I couldn't help but compare them. Both shows involve finding the murderer of a teenage girl, offshore casinos, personal videotapes being an important part of the mystery, and let's not forget they both take place in Washington state. Wayward Pines is yet another show that seems to be taking major influence from Twin Peaks, with the main character being a federal agent sent to investigate a murder in a small northwestern American town that has strange things taking place behind the scenes. Now believe me, I can go on all day about the different shows, movies, and video games that take influence from Twin Peaks, but we'd be here all day. It's amazing how such a short-lived show that was cancelled for low viewership over 20 years ago has become one of the most influential television programs of all time. Even though so much time has passed since it went off the air in 1991, fans have always held on to the hope that there may be one more trick up David Lynch's sleeve. And then out of nowhere, it was announced that a new season of the beloved show is being made, continuing the stories of all the citizens of Twin Peaks. What will these new episodes entail? I have no idea, but knowing Lynch, it will probably be very, very, very surreal, just like it should be. Well, there you have my brief history of Twin Peaks, and if you enjoyed it, you could click here to subscribe or click here to check out some of my other videos. So until next time, thanks for watching. Fun fact, this is just lukewarm water. Absolutely disgusting.